All right, welcome. My name is Ryan Holger with Temperature Equipment Corporation, and welcome to our webinar here. As many of you know, we started doing these webinars back in 2010, and we took a little hiatus for the past 4 or 5 months because we literally ran out of stuff to talk about. But now we got a whole library of stuff set up for you guys, and we'll be cranking through for about another 10 to 12 months. Every single Monday we'll have a webinar, with the exception of holidays. We're going to do something a little different this year with some of the webinars, depending on the topic. We're going to qualify them for continuing education units for various groups. This particular one today is qualified for PDHs, for professional engineers, for Illinois and Wisconsin. So when you registered, there would have been a question on the registration asking if you needed that certification, or excuse me, those CEUs. So if you answered yes to that, then we'll be sending you a certificate. However, in order to receive a certificate, you must be, quote unquote, participating in the webinar. The way that is actually qualified is that throughout the webinar, every 10-15 minutes, we'll have a poll question, and you'll have to answer those questions, presumably correctly. They will not be very complicated, but they will illustrate that you've been paying attention. Additionally, the GoToWebinar meeting service has a attentiveness score, if you will. So it actually tracks how much you're paying attention to the webinar. So if you're multitasking and doing things on your email and stuff like that, it's going to give you a low score, and hence you will not qualify for the CEUs. So if you are a PE and you're expecting to get a certificate for CEUs, please do follow the webinar, don't multitask on your laptop, and do answer the poll questions so we can send you out a certificate. All right, with that, we're going to go ahead and start. This week's webinar is Utility Incentive Programs for HVAC. This is primarily an update for the purposes of Illinois, because those all change on June 1st. And then normally we do an update for the other neighboring states on January 1st. However, I will include a bunch of stuff in here about the Wisconsin, Indiana, Michigan, Kansas City programs. So I will talk about those today as well. But the main focus is on the stuff in Illinois, because all that stuff just changed 2 weeks ago. If you have questions as we go, I'm going to encourage you to type them in the question chat box. And so that way I can try to pay attention to those as we go, and I will answer them, assuming they relate to rebates, or at least HVAC in general. Okay. So a lot of you guys probably are aware that in the United States we are basically giant energy pigs. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. You know that we use a ton of energy here. And specifically, we use a lot of energy related to buildings. Depending on whose stats you look at, it's anywhere from 28 to 40% of all of the energy consumption in the entire country goes towards buildings, meaning houses and commercial buildings. So it's about a third of the energy. Another third is for manufacturing. Another third is for the transportation industry. If you kind of look at that breakdown, we're going to, by the way, today we're going to talk about residential rebates first, and then we're going to switch over to commercial ones about halfway through. Residentially, almost half of the energy you use at your house is for space heating, and when you add space heating and cooling combined, it is about half. On top of that, we'll talk a little bit about water heating and a few other things as well today. You are probably well aware that we have statewide energy codes in most of the states in the Midwest. Specifically in Illinois, our energy code is the Illinois Energy Conservation Code 2012. This code gets more and more strict every 3 years, very similar to what some of our neighboring states do. We've been on this code for almost 18 months, so hopefully you are aware of it and hopefully you are following it. It is a statewide code. All municipalities are required to follow it, although I do realize that some police it more aggressively than others. But just because they're not policing it doesn't mean it's not the code. That's one way that we improve the efficiency of our buildings, is by dictating it by code. So that's been happening and going on for years, if not decades, depending on where you live. Another way that we do improve the efficiency of overall buildings is by increasing the minimum product efficiencies of certain things. The next one that's coming up, the next major one that relates to HVAC, is the Department of Energy changes for air conditioners and heat pumps. If you are in the Midwest, the split system air conditioner stays at 13 SEER, and that's the majority of what you guys all do. However, the heat pump split systems do change. The new minimum is 14 SEER for a heat pump and 8.2 HSPF, heating seasonal performance factor. Additionally, some of the split system combos change as well, as do some of the space-constrained products. So before, maybe you've used some of our old, like R22 First Company replacement through-the-wall condensing units in a condo building at 10.9 EER. Well, that's different now. That's up to a 12 rating. So you got to pay attention to some of those starting on January 1st. The next one beyond that is the water heater changes. Hang on, it didn't update on your screen there. Okay, there we go. The next update after that from the DOE is April 16th, 2015. That's the change to water heaters. The changes are pretty minor for gas water heaters. They go up a little bit for the the typical 40 to 50 gallons, just up a little bit, a little bit closer towards Energy Star, but not quite there. They do increase quite a bit for the larger gas-fired heaters, which is 55 gallons and up. And then the really big change is on the electric water heater side, 55 gallons and up. You'll see there it goes to an energy factor of 2 point something. Well, that's basically 200 and some percent efficient. So the only current technology to get you there is a heat pump. So basically, it's stating that all electric water heaters, 55 gallons and larger, have to be heat pump water heaters. So if you're not familiar with heat pump water heaters, this is probably a good summer and fall to get familiar with those. And there's tons of other standards like that change that the Department of Energy or other federal entities govern. These are some other ones that are coming up. Actually, just a few weeks ago, the room air conditioner standards changed. The furnace one, which all of us were paying attention to, the 90% one, that's been postponed. I'm not sure if it'll even be 90% when it's revised, and if it is, that's 5+ years away, so it's nothing to think about at the moment. But there's tons of other ones coming up: furnace fans, dehumidifiers, PTAX, all kinds of stuff. A great website, if you've not used it before, is appliance-standards.org. You can use to track some of these things as they change. The third way that we try to get people to do the more efficient thing at their homes, or businesses for that matter, is with tax credits. Most of you are probably aware that tax credits for furnaces and boilers and all that kind of stuff had expired on December 31st, so those are over and done with. However, there are still some tax credits that go all the way through the end of 2016, and the ones that relate to HVAC would be geothermal heat pumps and solar thermal water heating. There's also other ones, as you can see up there as well, but those are the two that are HVAC related, so geothermal and solar thermal water heating. Those ones go through the end of December of 2016. It's 30% tax credit, so that's better than a tax deduction. It's a tax credit right off the bottom line with no cap. So if you spend $100 grand on a geo system for your house, you get a 30 grand tax credit. It's a pretty sweet deal. The fourth major way that we motivate people to improve the efficiency of their homes and buildings is with utility rebate and incentive programs. That's what we're really going to focus on today. That's the goal of our webinar today. And you can see over on the right-hand side is a copy of one of my gas bills. It looks like it's from 3 or 2 years ago now. And on everyone's gas bill in most states, and certainly in Illinois, if you have Nicor, Peoples, North Shore, Ameren, you are paying into a rebate program on all of your residential and commercial bills. So on my bill there, I'm looking at it, I paid almost $2 in for that particular month. It's a fairly small amount. A lot of folks don't notice it, but you're paying in every single month. In a commercial building, it could be quite large. People might be paying in thousands of dollars a month. So the way you get your money back out is by making efficiency improvements to your home or to your building and then applying to get incentives for that stuff. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Common incentive types that you will be looking for or eligible for particular buildings. There's equipment upgrades, and that's mainly what we're going to focus on today. So replacing your furnace, your boiler, your air conditioner, that kind of stuff. Generally speaking, pretty much any contractor can facilitate that installation and then help the building owner or homeowner apply for a rebate. Most of the time it's equipment-related stuff, although there are control systems you can add. You can do tune-ups on equipment, things like that. And it's not limited to just HVAC. There's lighting and other aspects, but we're going to focus on HVAC-related stuff since that's the audience here today. There's also some direct install programs where the utilities come in and install low-flow shower heads and CFL bulbs and things like that. We're not really going to focus on that today either because the audience today is contractors. And there are also some energy auditing programs that either the utilities do for the building or homeowner, or that they have a group of subcontractors that do the work. So these are typically no-cost or low-cost audits depending on the utility and the specific program to help people recognize what their building is doing and where they can make the improvements and kind of prioritize them, and then hopefully go ahead and make those improvements. And then the third thing that's usually involved in some of these utility programs that's becoming much more popular now is on-bill financing. So we recognize that everybody can't afford everything, so they're going to buy the lowest cost thing they can when they replace. The idea here is not only are you giving them a rebate to kind of encourage them to do not the low cost thing, but the low energy thing, which typically costs more, but not only give them that cashback rebate, but also help them finance this long term. And we'll talk about that today and how that works. In regards to some of the specifics of some of these, let me get this moving along here. Let me check and see if we got any questions that I need to answer right now. All right, so we'll keep moving on here. Oops, sorry about that. So anyway, everyone's paying in on their utility bill. It's basically funded by you. It's your money. It's the ratepayers' money, and this is the way you get it back out of the system. So first thing is on the ComEd side, residential. We're talking about residential first. We'll talk about commercial in a little bit. There are rebates for installing central air conditioners. There's two tiers of rebate. They either have to be 14.5 SEER or 16 SEER, and they get either a $300 or $400 rebate to go along with that 14.5 and 16 SEER. This is not a new rebate, but the big change is that previously you had to apply for this rebate on your gas utility application for incentives. The difference is now ComEd is now processing them themselves. So if you're installing a furnace and AC combo, you can apply for the furnace rebate from your gas utility, the AC rebate from ComEd, and it's two separate applications that you'd have to fill out, but you can get rebates for both of those. Additionally, for the ComEd AC rebate, you do have to do it with a gas rebate qualifying furnace still. So it still has to be that way. It's just a separate application. So you can't install an AC only and get a rebate. You can't install AC with a boiler and get a rebate. It has to be installed with a furnace, a new furnace that qualifies for a gas utility rebate. All right, so speaking of the gas utilities, I guess we should probably do our first poll question here so I can make sure everybody's paying attention and we get our credits for the people that need PDHs. So I'm going to go ahead and launch the first poll question on the screen. This is the first time I've used the polling feature on here, so bear with me and hopefully everything works perfectly. All right, so the poll question is, who funds the utility incentive programs? The first choice is utility, second choice is the government, the third choice is the ratepayers themselves, and the last one would be TEC. We fund it for you because we love you so much. So we'll give it a couple seconds here, and we'll see everybody that comes in, and then we'll put the results up on the screen here. Give another 5 seconds. And I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. All right, let me see if I can get it to pop up on the screen for everybody. All right, you should be able to see that. That's the results of the poll. So the correct answer would be the ratepayers themselves, the people that are actually receiving the utility bills and are on the account. They're actually paying it as part of their fees, if you will. So you're paying not only for your fuel usage and your account fees, but you're also paying into this fund for the rebates and incentives. So that would be the correct answer, the third one, the ratepayers themselves. All right, let me switch back to the regular screen here. All right, so, oops, sorry about that. So that's the AC side, or the electric side for residential ComEd. The gas side, in the northern half of Illinois, you're one of 3 utilities. So you're either Nicor, which is the green territory represented there, your Chicago, which is People's Gas, which is that little tiny white box over on the right-hand side of Cook County, or you are North Shore Gas, which is the white box above the Cook County one there. So you're in one of those 3 utilities if you're in the northern half of the state. If you're in the southern half of the state, you would typically have Ameren as your gas supplier, which we're not going to really focus on today because none of you guys on the webinar are really, well, only one of you, it looks like, is an Ameren customer. So for Nicor Gas, here's what the rebates look like. This is what they did look like, and this is what they're changing to. So there's still going to be rebates for 92, 95, and 97% furnaces. The 95% furnaces are reducing down to 250. The 97s are reducing down to 300. And I probably should have mentioned it in case you weren't aware, but For the next 3 years of the utility rebates on the gas side, all the rebates will be less than they were the past 3 years, because the rebates are basically based on utility revenues on a 3-year average. In the past 3 years, gas has been really, really cheap and not in very much demand, relatively speaking. So all the revenues for the utility are down, hence the rebate maximums for the whole program are down. So that's why you're seeing lower dollar amount rebates. So 200, 250, or 300 for 92, 95, or 97% furnaces. The 90% boiler rebate for Nicor is eliminated, and the 95% boiler rebate was slightly reduced down to $425. So that's what the furnace and boilers look like. Storage water heater rebates still exist for Nicor, but they are different. It's still a 0.67 energy factor water heater, so that's the efficiency rating of it. However, you can no longer get it as a standalone item. You have to do it in combination with either a 95 or a 97% furnace and a programmable thermostat. So if you got a 95 or 97% furnace being installed on a Nicor incentive, and you add a 0.67 water heater and a programmable thermostat, the rebates double. So there'll be $600 for the furnace water heater thermostat combo and $500 for the 95% furnace water heater thermostat combo. So hopefully that makes sense there. But no longer having standalone rebates. They're not super cost effective on their own, so they kind of got to get bundled up a little bit. There are some other rebates we should discuss. There is still a rebate for programmable thermostats. It is a $20 rebate. By the way, if you are doing the water heater furnace stat combo rebate we just mentioned, you don't get that plus this $20. Right? So this $20 is if you're doing standalone programmable thermostats, or if you're adding a programmable thermostat to a furnace but not doing the water heater deal. The old value packages are gone. That was where you had one line item, if you will, for furnaces, AC, water heaters, everything bundled together. You can still get rebates for all that stuff, but there's no longer a value bundled bonus package. We already mentioned the smaller or the lower efficiency 90% boilers are out. Only 95% boilers get a rebate. Indirect water heaters, which is where you add a domestic tank onto your boiler, those are out, and pipe insulation rebates are also eliminated. So those are the major changes there. All right. If you are doing what we used to call the complete system replacement, it still works the same way, like I said, but you got to do the ComEd application separate from the Nicor application. This is what those combos would look like. I won't read them to you. I'll just kind of highlight. The 97% furnace with the top 16 SEER air conditioner gets you a $700 rebate. Like we said, it's a little bit less than it was previously because the gas funding pool is a little bit smaller. So anywhere from $500 to $700 for combining condensing furnaces with high efficiency central air. By the way, all of the rebates in Illinois end on May 31st of each year. All the ones in Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Kansas City that we're going to talk about, those all typically expire on December 31st. So it's a little bit of a difference there. This is kind of a summary of the Nicor gas equipment rebates. So this is a good screenshot to have. So furnaces 250, 300. Boilers got to be 95% for 425. $20 for a programmable thermostat. You can bundle water heaters with furnaces and programmable stats for a combined total of either 500 or 600, depending on how good the furnace is. And then on top of that, you can add the AC 14.5 or 16 SEER. There are also rebates for non-equipment stuff on the Nicor Gas Residential Incentive Program. I don't know what the best way to refer to these is, so I'm just going to call them weatherization type incentives. So there are different things here. There's air sealing, for like air sealing the attic and the building envelope. There's attic insulation rebates. There's exterior wall insulation rebates. There's foundation wall insulation rebates, and there are duct sealing rebates. So those are the 5 that you can get. So you can get quite a bit of money if you did all of these things. The keys to this particular program is, unlike the furnace and boiler and all those rebates we just mentioned, these are not open to everyone, every contractor. They're open to every homeowner, but not every contractor. To be involved in this program, you have to apply to be part of the program and sign a contract, stating that you're going to follow the rules, blah, blah, blah. And some of the guidelines before you even decide you want to go down that path, you need to be BPI certified, so that's one requirement, and you have to be a company that does all 5 of these services listed here. So if you just do duct sealing, for example, because I know there's some aero seal dealers on this webinar, if you just do duct sealing, you can't be part of this program. You have to do duct sealing and envelope sealing and insulation of buildings in order to be part of the program. So if you do all of those services, then you can join the program. If you don't do all those services and you only do one or two of them, you may want to partner with someone else that does do all of them. So together you might be able to offer all of this. All right, let's do another poll question here. All right, so the question is, ComEd residential AC incentive rebates require A, 14.5 SEER or greater, B, an AHRI number, C, rebate qualifying gas furnace, or D, all of the above. Looks like most of you guys are doing pretty good. The nice thing about these poll questions is it gives me a chance to have a drink of water here. All right, I'm going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'll put the results up here. All right, so 15% of the people said 14.5 SEER or greater, which is true. 2% said you need an AHRI number, which is true, even though I didn't mention it. So 7% said you need a rebate qualifying gas furnace, which is true. And then the correct answer is D. 76% say you need all three of those things, which is true. So correct answer is D. All right, so continuing on here. Oops. So in addition to the residential rebates for single-family houses, there are some rebates for multifamily. And multifamily is kind of weird, as you might guess. It's kind of like a commercial building. It's kind of like a residential building. So sometimes you're applying for it on either one of those pieces of the pie. But there are some bonus rebates for multifamily stuff. These are the specific bonus rebates for pipe insulation, boiler reset controls, and boiler heating tune-ups. So you get any of the commercial incentives for that, which we'll talk about later on, plus you can get these bonuses for multifamily. I'll try to distinguish special things like multifamily and small business and that kind of stuff as we move along. Moving on to Peoples and North Shore residential incentives. Combining these two because the programs are combined. They are run together. They have the exact same dollar amount rebates. Those two utilities are owned by the same parent company, if you didn't already know. Occasionally, they do have separate rebates for certain things. That's not the case at the very moment in time, so we're going to talk about them together. So there is one rebate tier for furnaces. It's a 95% furnace, and it gets a $350 rebate. So the 92% tier is eliminated. The 97% tier is eliminated, although obviously the 97 still qualifies for the 95. And you got one single rebate dollar amount of $350 for 95% and up. You'll also notice on some of these, it'll say Home Energy Jumpstart Program, $150 bonus. If you do that, if you, the homeowner, do that Jumpstart program before some of these other rebates, they give you a coupon that you can use for some of these bigger ticket items. The Jumpstart program, where they come in, they do like a basic energy audit at your house, install some free things like low flow shower heads and that kind of thing, and then hand you a coupon for $150 to use for some of these other things like furnaces and boilers. So furnaces are $350 plus a potential bonus. Boilers, not a lot of steam boilers in residential, but if you do have one, there's still a rebate for that. Hot water boilers got to be 88% AFUE and greater. There's not really too many that are 88%, so really you're talking about 90% condensing boilers and up. That gets a $450 rebate. And then there's also a rebate if you have a single product that does space heating and domestic water, which are fairly niche pieces of equipment, but they are out there. You can also get rebates from Peoples and North Shore for domestic water heating. There are two rebate tiers here. There's a tankless water heater, which is $250. That's be a 0.80 energy factor. And there's an indirect water heater, which is where we add a tank onto a condensing boiler for $250. So if you notice on the Nicor side, there's rebates for storage water heaters only and no rebates for tankless and no rebates for indirect. On the Peoples and North Shore gas, it's the opposite. There's rebates for tankless and indirect, but not for storage water heaters. So if you do work in both utilities, kind of pay attention to that. The same thing doesn't qualify in both places. There are rebates for pipe insulation on hot water boilers and on steam. And there is still a rebate for programmable thermostats of $20, but if you'll notice there highlighted in yellow, it's different than it was in years past. Contractors are no longer allowed to offer that particular rebate. It is only applicable for self-installation by homeowners. So it's a little bit weird there compared to all the other things on this program. So just pay attention to that. If you're used to adding that line item for rebates to your customer as a contractor, you can no longer do that. You obviously still help them get a programmable stat. You just can't get a rebate. No new questions popping up. Okay. Also at Peoples and North Shore Gas, there are rebates for attic insulation. So if you're in the home performance world, that's available to you. You do need to be listed on the Illinois Home Performance Contractor website. I put the link up there. In fact, if I'm smart, I could probably cut and paste that link for you and put it into the chat box thing. So that way anybody who wants to click on it can have that. All right. So you would need to do that. And then additionally, there's a duct sealing rebate. This did change a little bit. It used to be $3 per CFM reduction. Now it's $2 per CFM reduction, but the maximum is still $500. I know some of the aerial seal dealers were concerned about that, but we started looking at it, and pretty much when you do aerial seal, you max out on the 500 either way. So the 2 or 3 is pretty irrelevant for the aerial seal guys. If you're doing things by hand, maybe it makes a little bit of a difference. But basically, you have to test in and test out. So you got to do a pre-test and a post-test before and after you do the sealing, whether you use mastic or tape or aerial seal or whatever you're doing. So you got to do a pre and post-test, and then however much you reduce the CFM, you multiply by that by 2, and that's your rebate with a maximum of $500. You can also only have 50% of the duct system's got to be in the unconditioned space, and the definition of that's changed a little bit, 50% in unconditioned or 70% of it in semi-conditioned, like a basement or something like that. So there's a little bit difference on how that's interpreted. In order to offer duct sealing rebates, you have to be listed on the Illinois Code Diagnostics website, which is the same website that is used for duct sealing testing that's required by Illinois Code. I'm assuming all of you guys know that it is required by code if you have ductwork outside the envelope. In order to perform that for code purposes, you have to be listed on that website. That same website is being used to determine if you're a qualified contractor for this rebate program, incentive program. There's different ways to be qualified: BPI, ResNet, DET, Duct and Envelope Testing Verifier certification, or aerial seal certification. Those are the 4 major ways to get listed on that website, and some of those have multiple options on where you can be trained and tested. All right, we'll keep moving. All right, last thing for Illinois residential is the Illinois on-bill financing programs. All 3 gas utilities as well as the electric utility in northern Illinois are on this program. It basically works very similar for all of them. For single-family stuff, it's up to $20,000 is the maximum. You can do 3, 5, or 10-year terms. It's 4.99% fixed rate, no down payment to the homeowner, no cost to the contractor. You do have to enroll with AFC first, but there's no cost to do that. For Peoples and North Shore Gas, it's only applicable to furnaces and boilers. So those are the 2 things you can do on the program, furnaces and boilers, and that applies to single family or condos. Additionally, you could do multifamily buildings up to 4 units. For the ComEd side, it's for central AC and refrigerators. Additionally, if you have an all-electric house with no gas connection to it, and it's all ComEd, then you can also do the weatherization stuff, which is the duct sealing, attic insulation, and that kind of stuff. Just like Peoples in North Shore, it's $20,000 up to at 4.99%. You can pick 3, 5, and 10-year terms. If you do a multifamily building, about 5 units and above, you can get up to $150,000 at 5.99%, and you can do pretty much anything on there if it's a rebate qualifying thing: boilers, furnaces, water heaters, etc. There's also a small business tier, which is up to $20,000 at 5.99. Nicor has the program now as well, which is relatively new for the Nicor side. Works very similar to the other ones. The difference on the single-family stuff and the small multifamily, 4 units and less, is that you can do furnaces, boilers, and anything else in the rebate program. So furnaces, boilers, duct sealing, water heaters, anything that gets a rebate for single-family can also be financed on your bill. There's also a multifamily tier, just like ComEd, $150,000 at $599. And there's also a small business tier, which I believe is up to $20,000. All right, let's launch another question here for the poll. All right, so what is the statewide energy code in Illinois? The IECC 2009, 2012, 2013, or ASHRAE 90.1 2013? Making me think all the way back to 25 minutes ago when we first started the presentation. Looks like most people are voted. Give it another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close it. All right, so most people got it right. 67% of you said the International Energy Conservation Code 2012. That is our current statewide code in Illinois. The old one was 2009, but it expired a year and a half ago. Now we're on the 2012. There is no 2013, so that was a trick question. And as a state, we've not moved to ASHRAE 90.1 2013 yet. Well, we will eventually. Oops, there we go. All right, let me close that, and we'll keep moving on. All right, a couple quick things. I'm not going to read through all these because these have not changed since January 1st, but just so everyone is aware, there's some of you guys that are on the Indiana side, and some of you guys do work on the Indiana border. There are a lot of rebates in Indiana, just like in Illinois, although Indiana, at the end of this year, they'll probably go away permanently. Some law changes happen to eliminate some of these incentive programs. Utilities might continue them on their own, but they won't be required to, which makes it less likely that it has to happen. So just kind of keep that in mind. Oops, sorry about that. So 95% gas boilers, $450. 90% gas boilers, $300. You could do a 95% gas furnace, but it has to have an ECM variable speed motor on it. That gets $250. If you do it without the ECM, it's only $200. If you do a 92% furnace, it's $150. Programmable stat, $20. It's pretty similar to the kind of stuff we have on the Illinois side. The one difference is that sometimes electric and gas things kind of get combined together, like having the ECM motor required with the furnace. There's also a very nice rebate for ductless split systems for heat pumps. If it's 17 SEER and 9.5 HSPF, it's $500 per unit. If you're replacing electric heat, if you're replacing a different heat pump, it's $300. There's a rebate for heat pump water heaters. That dollar amount went up this year, up to $300. There's a standard heat pump rebate for 15 SEER 8.2 HSPF for $200. An ECM retrofit, $150. 15 SEER air conditioner combined with a 95% ECM furnace is an extra $200 on the AC side. Plus, the gas furnace side, you get additionally. There's tune-ups for AC and heat pump, $50. Dehumidifiers, ceiling fans, $750 for HVAC performance package, which is where you combine AC tune-up, add an ECM motor, and then do duct sealing. So really make the HVAC perform like it was originally designed to do. $20 for a programmable stat. There's also rebates for attic insulation, wall insulation, and duct sealing. Duct sealing is you can get up to a maximum of $400, and 40% of the duct has to be outside the conditioned envelope to qualify. All right, on the Michigan side, there's rebates for a lot of stuff as well. I didn't see anyone from Michigan on the list here, so I won't go through this in great detail, but it's a similar kind of thing. 95% furnaces qualify. Condensing boilers, 92% qualify at a nice $1,000 amount. Programmable stats, $20, which is very similar. Tank water heaters get a rebate. Tankless water heaters get a rebate. Heat pumps, rebatable also. The reason that one's a range is because you can get higher dollar amounts for having 16 or 17 SEER. Same with the AC, higher dollar amounts if you go to 16 or 17 SEER. ECM motor retrofits, $100. They have a rebate for geothermal, which is kind of nice because a lot of states don't have that. They can't really decide whether it's a utility thing or a renewable thing and whose bucket it should fall under. But these guys made the choice to put it under the utility. There's a 21 SEER duct-free split rebate of $1,500. That's a huge dollar amount. So if you do work in Michigan, you should really be pushing duct-free splits for people that have additions and add-ons and things like that that are not being conditioned correctly by the regular system. To add a duct-free split is probably a good way to go, or a hydronic system that doesn't support ducted systems very well. There are rebates for duct sealing, although they're very small, air sealing, insulation rebates. There's a pretty cool bonus program they have. If you do an energy audit and then you do more than one of the above things just mentioned, you can get bonuses. And if you do up to 7 of them, you can get all the dollar amounts combined plus an extra $1,100. So Michigan gets pretty good as it goes along. Wisconsin has a pretty well-established program that's been around for well over a decade, probably even longer. And it's a statewide program, which is nice. FocusOnEnergy.com is the website. And it doesn't really matter which utility you're in. It's pretty much the same website, the same applications, the same everything, regardless of your utility. And they also have rebates for other things that you don't normally see, like you can see right there, 90% propane furnace with an ECM motor is actually eligible for a rebate. So propane furnaces, natural gas furnaces, gas furnaces with an ECM motor combined with 16 SEER AC, ECM retrofits, gas boilers are on the list. The reason you see a range on some of those is the amount of rebate you qualify for is dependent on your household income level. So if you are low income or even mid-tier income, you can get larger rebates than if you are someone who's in the higher income brackets. So that's why you see a range on the slide here. They do also have a geothermal rebate now. It's got to be 15 EER on the cooling side, 3.5 COP on the heating side, which you can get a rebate for that. And then just like every other utility, they've added air sealing and insulation. So you're going to see that trend quite a bit on residential of adding in having rebates for home performance type stuff, building envelope type stuff. You'll see less and less HVAC rebates over time and more home performance stuff over time. There are also some financing options in certain parts of Wisconsin. Milwaukee has a pretty good program. Check it out. I won't read it to you. It's smartenergypays.com, and you could do some financing through the city of Milwaukee and a local credit union for pretty good rates for some of these utility rebate qualifying things. Real quick, for our friends down in Kansas City, nothing has changed on your rebate program this year, so everything's pretty well consistent there. Same kind of stuff. Condensing furnaces, $200. 96% condensing furnace, $300. Boilers, $200. Stats, $25. Water heaters, there's tiers for tank water heaters, condensing water heaters, and tankless water heaters. And then also there's a home performance with Energy Star rebate. You can get up to a maximum of $1,200 for doing the building envelope and insulation and blower door testing kind of stuff. So that is definitely a trend. Other side of Kansas City, the Kansas side of Kansas City, there's some pretty decent size rebates on the AC side, up to $850 for a 16 SEER, $650 for a 14 SEER, programmable stat $35, and then once again, home performance with Energy Star, $600 rebate. There's tons of other stuff that we didn't go to in great detail. There's entirely different programs for new construction. Everything I just mentioned right now is really for a retrofit replacement type scenario, preferably early replacement. But there's new construction programs. There's rebates for cycling your AC, special stuff for low-income folks, rebates for non-HVAC things like refrigerators and appliance recycling and lighting and all kinds of stuff like that. All right, on to the commercial side. Let me check and see if there's any new questions. There's not. All right, no questions so far. We'll keep on trucking. Commercially, we use quite a bit of energy for HVAC as well. You can see on this chart, national average is about 25% for heating, 6% for cooling, another 6% for heating and cooling ventilation, 7% water heating, so refrigeration's on there as well. So pretty much HVAC related stuff, half of the building energy. So there's quite a bit going on there. Just like with residential, we have statewide energy codes. In Illinois, it is also the 2012 International Energy Conservation Code, so that applies both residentially and commercially. In other neighboring states, a lot of states like Wisconsin, Michigan, they're on 2009 version. Indiana is on ASHRAE 90.1 2010, which is similar to 2007, which is similar to 2009 IECC. So those other neighboring states will eventually upgrade and be like Illinois, but we're the guinea pig for the Midwest and Illinois, so we are in the 2012. The federal tax deductions are all gone. That was for all the HVAC stuff. That's all over and expired, as are the ones for lighting and building envelope. There are still some federal tax credits that are available, however, and those last through the end of 2016. And the two that relate to what we're talking about today, just like with the residential, are ground source heat pumps and solar thermal. So for ground source heat pumps, it's 10% of the total cost. And this is a credit, not a deduction, so it comes right off the bottom line. And for solar thermal water heating, it's 30% of the installed cost you get as a credit back. There's also some stuff for accelerated depreciation and things like that. I don't really understand all of that, so I'm not going to talk about it and fudge it all up. But some of that stuff you could still be pending on what you got going on. We're going to focus on the utility stuff, though, just like we did on the res side. So we'll do that. We'll start with Nicor gas like we did residentially, and we'll talk about what's different, and then we'll talk about everything in aggregate. So some of the things that changed, demand control ventilation is actually no longer on the rebate program. It was only on there a year. One of the main reasons why it's off the program is because on a lot of commercial buildings they have VAV systems, which by definition are cooling only. So to get a rebate for DCV, which doesn't really apply during the heating portion, which is morning warm-up, didn't make a lot of sense. So you could still do DCV rebates with CO2 sensors. You just have to do it as a custom application because they got to be able to decipher how you're using it in your building. Because some buildings, like a VAV system, it doesn't make sense on the heating side. It still makes sense on the cooling side, with electric, but not on the heating side. So that's why that's changed. Some of the rebates with the steam traps changed. The bonuses expired. Those are all over with. Everything's back to its normal original rebate amounts. And then the condensing unit heater rebate changed. Instead of being a per MBH thing, it's a per unit thing, just to make it a little simpler and easier to follow. There are also some changes to the custom program. So if you didn't know, commercially, all the gas utilities and electric utilities have a bunch of lists of rebate things, which we're going to go through right now. But you can also do stuff that is custom. So anything that's not on the list, you can apply to get a rebate for if you can show that it saved energy. So the big change there is that the tier changed a little bit. So 2,500 to 15,000 annual therm savings, they pay you 75 cents a therm. If you get over 15,000 therms per year saved, it's $1 a therm. That's the big change there. The other big change is that, not on custom, but just in general, is that there's a small business tier and a multifamily tier. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff as we go along through the rebates themselves. There are opportunities to do some energy audit type stuff, just like there was when we talked about residential. For Nicor, there's a couple different things that they call that. There's an opportunity assessment, facility assessment, and energy assessment. And it really kind of depends on the tier of customer you are and the detail level of the assessment and time required to do so. So just depending on what kind of gas user you are and how much time you have involved. But you can get some of these low-cost assessments done in your building to help you prioritize what you might want to work on and improve upon. The small business program has some changes as well. There's higher rebates for some things like infrared heaters, higher rebates for small business custom, higher rebates for pipe insulation. There's some lower rebates on certain things like unit heaters, non-condensing boilers, so stuff that's 88% and below, if you will. Decrease on water heaters and steam traps. And there's a few things that got eliminated from the small business program: hot water heater installation, boiler stack economizers, guest room management controls, and furnace tune-ups are the HVAC ones. Small business does have some benefits, though. So if you're one of these 60,000 therms a year and smaller customers, you can get larger rebates for certain things. And this kind of just illustrates how large some of those bonuses get. So like boiler reset controls, it's a pretty big bonus. It goes from 50 cents per MBH to $1.25. Condensing boilers go from $500 to $1,200. So if you have a small condensing boiler, 300,000 BTUs and less for your small business, $1,200 is a pretty substantial rebate. Furnaces, instead of $300 and $400 for 92 and 95s, you can get $550 or $1,000 for 95% furnace. So that's definitely a good deal there. Infrared heaters, instead of $700, you can get $1,200 for putting infrared heaters in, like the back shop warehouse area or something like that of your building. So you get some pretty big premiums on small business for some of these rebates. We're going to go through each of the rebates here and some of them you'll see an SB on there for small business, or I believe I got a couple of them that say MF, multifamily. If you see those on there, that means there's an increased rebate. So this is the boiler page. So for condensing boilers, which are those first 5 on top there, it's anywhere from $500 to $7,500 depending on the size of the boiler. And then the small ones, like we just mentioned, 300,000 BTUs under that, instead of $500, you get $1,200. So if you put in a 1 million BTU boiler, you get a $5,000 rebate. If you put in 3 1 million BTU boilers, you get a $15,000 rebate, and so on, kind of like that. There's also some tiers for some non-condensing boilers, which got to be basically between 85 and 88% is where you're going to find those guys there. So it's a lower dollar amount because they don't save as much energy, but they're still helpful. There are rebates for putting a natural gas furnace upgrade in a commercial building. So it's $300 or $400 for 92 and 95%. And like we said, there's a bonus for small business. $550 and $1,000 would become the numbers. Infrared heaters, $700 per infrared heater. Just pay attention to a couple things there. We've had this come up a few times. Outdoor patio heating, which is a great infrared heater application, that is not a rebate eligible thing. This is only for space heating stuff, not for heating the outdoors. And then also make sure that the infrared heater is not using combustion air from space. It's got to be directly piping the combustion air from outdoors, and then obviously exhausting the byproducts outdoors as well. Condensing unit heaters have a rebate with a bonus for small businesses. Storage water heaters, also rebatable. Got to be a 0.67 for a smaller heater under 75,000 BTU input, and you got to be 88% thermal efficient for the larger ones. By the way, energy factor and thermal efficiency have nothing to do with each other, 2 unrelated tests. So that's why the dollar amounts and stuff all seem a little weird when you look at them visually. You can get rebates for boiler reset controls, 50 cents per MBH, up to $1,500 per boiler for resetting the boiler based on outdoor air temperature. If you're already putting outside air reset on a condensing boiler, like you're buying a condensing boiler that comes with that, then you can't double dip this. It's already built into the boiler rebate. And then there are some bonuses for MF, which is multifamily, and SB, small business, on there. Boiler tune-ups are also rebatable, 40 cents per MBH for a commercial building, 50 cents if it's multifamily or small business, maximum $1,500. And process boilers are even higher than that. Steam trap rebates, which I know you guys all love. Tons of rebates on that. So your typical commercial building is $50 per trap. When you get to the more industrial stuff, it's $200 or $250 depending on the pressure. And then there is a small business steam trap incentive. So instead of $50, it's $300. So that's a good target as well if you got a small business on steam. As you know, if the steam trap fails open, nobody ever notices. It still heats the space, and the way they control capacity is by opening the window. So fixing these steam traps can save a lot of energy. Rebates for pipe insulation, depending on whether it's indoor or outdoor, regular commercial, multifamily, or small business. All right, that brings us to North Shore and Peoples Gas. We'll talk about those combined because just like residential, they are the same program on the commercial side as well. There's a rebate for boilers that are 300,000 BTUs and larger. They got to be at least 88%, so they're basically condensing boilers. It is $3 per MBH. So if you put a 1 million BTU boiler in that's 90-some percent efficient, you get a $3,000 rebate. There's also a rebate for steam boilers as well. Obviously, it's less. There are rebates for boiler reset controls. It's 50 cents per MBH, up to $1,500, so very similar to what the Nicor folks are doing. There's also rebates for boiler tune-ups, 40 cents per MBH, very similar to what the Nicor folks are doing as well. The cap here, though, is now $500 per boiler. So just pay attention to that a little bit. Let's see, steam traps. Those are pretty hefty rebates on the steam trap side. For your, typical commercial buildings, the rebates are anywhere from $30 to $120, depending on whether you tested them or first. So that's why they do have a rebate for actually testing it. So they'll pay you $10 per trap for going and testing and surveying all the traps in the building and making a list of all of them. And then they'll pay you to actually replace them as well. Industrial ones get up to about $300 per trap. There's a brand new rebate for Peoples in North Shore this year, which I'm very excited about, which is ERV rebate, Energy Recovery Ventilator. It's 75 cents per CFM of outdoor air. So if you're bringing 1,000 CFM in, it's a $750 rebate. If you're bringing 10,000 in, it's $7,500 rebate. So it does say on here that this is for sensible recovery only. You can still do this for the latent recovery projects, which is what most ERVs are in our climate zone, or you could do the latent ones as a custom rebate and potentially get more money, although custom is a little bit harder and more paperwork. So there's kind of a trade-off there. If it's a huge project, you'll probably do it custom. If it's a small project, you'll just put it under this one and only get the rebate for the sensible portion of it, if you will, and just kind of not get the latent extra rebate because it's a lot more work. But it's a good rebate. Hopefully people check it out and give it a try. We do quite a bit of ERV work in the Chicago area. Furnaces, $350 for 95% furnace. Condensing unit heaters got a rebate as well. Water heaters, for the small ones, 0.67 energy factor, which is 75,000 BTUs and less, $150. For the big ones, which is 75,000 BTUs and larger, it's got to be 88% thermal efficiency, and then you're paid $2 per MBH input. Programmable stats, $50. There's other stuff too, which you don't have time to cover everything, but there's rebates for insulating pipes, fittings, and valves. There's DCV rebates for kitchen systems, food service equipment, and then obviously custom rebates for anything you can come up with that can be proven to save energy. Save gas energy, obviously. Oops, sorry about that. Keeps clicking on there. All right. Let's check and see if there are any questions. Let's see what the questions were here. Is there any rebate for thermostat installed from Nicor small business? So we'll go back to Nicor here real quick. So there's no special bonus rebate. Oh, I don't know if you guys can see that. I gotta actually put it on the screen, don't I? I don't know how to put it on the screen, so I'm just going to leave it there, and I'll just mention it. So there's no small business bonus for Nicor commercial thermostats. To answer that question, another one was a follow-up to that, so that doesn't matter. Okay. All right, on the ComEd side of the equation, which is the electric side. So there are a couple new rebates. There's one for advanced Rtu Controls. This is $100 per ton. And it's for units that range between 7.5 and 25 tons. And what you're doing is combining staged air volume, which is where we put a VFD on the rooftop unit, and we use it to control different air speeds to match up with different stages of cooling. You're putting DCV, demand control ventilation CO2 sensors on there, and you're putting economizers on the rooftop. So if you're doing those three things, you can get $100 per ton. There's increased rebate for variable speed drives on chiller compressors. It went from $25 up to $4 per horsepower. So it's a little bit higher there. Just note that this is only for retrofits, not for new chillers. New chillers are covered under a different program. And then the building automation energy management system rebates are a little bit different now. There's multiple tiers, and I'll kind of show you what that looks like. I'm actually going to pull up the ComEd application and show you if I can get it to come up correctly for you. All right. Hopefully that comes up on your screen. All right, so you should be able to see what that looks like now. So this is the ComEd application. So here's what the chiller rebates look like. They have not changed from last year. It's $20 per ton for hitting these certain tiers. Plus you get a $3.50 per ton efficiency bonus. Right, so if I'm looking at the first one, if I got a centrifugal chiller above 600 tons, I got to be 0.49 kW per ton IPLV or better to get the $20. If I'm at 0.48, then I get $23.50. If I'm at 0.47, I get $27 per ton, and so on down the line. You'll note that all these are IPLV, which is the part load efficiency. There are no requirements for full load efficiency, because ComEd recognizes you pretty much almost never run at full load, so part load is where the action is at. But you got to know what kind of compressor you have, centrifugal, screw, or recip. So centrifugal or screw would be the two main types, and then the tonnage range to find out what your bogey is going to be, what you got to hit. There's also a tier for air-cooled. That one is independent of the compressor type that you have. It just matters if you're above or below 150 tons, and then the target changes slightly, either 0.85 or 0.86 kW per ton. And then you get $30 per ton as your rebate. For some reason, my mouse just locked up. What's the deal there? Give me 1 second. My computer's not playing nice. What's going on here? All right, I'm not sure what happened there. All right, hopefully you guys can see my screen there. That application on the website from ComEd locked up, so let's go back to the regular screen here. So that's what the chiller rebates would look like. There's rebates for room air conditioners and P-tax. There's rebates for variable speed drives on chillers. Like I said, this one just changed, went from 25 to 40, so this is slightly outdated there. And then for fans and pumps on HVAC, it's $60 per horsepower, which is a pretty good rebate. Let's see if I can get that other one to come back up. It's not going to cooperate. All right, well, we'll just keep moving on. The other thing that happens in Illinois, and you know what, someone could do me a favor too, type something in the question box so I know you guys can still hear me after that thing locked up. I'll try to read any other questions while I'm in here. Ed asks, what about rebates? Okay, yeah, you guys are saying you guys can hear me. Ed asks, what about rebates for burners in existing boilers? Depending on which utility you're talking about, Ed, there are still rebates for doing that, although most utilities have gone back to making that a custom rebate instead of a prescriptive rebate off the list. So it'd be something you do custom typically. If you can show energy savings for your burner retrofit or combustion management controls or something like that, then you can get a rebate for those. In Illinois, depending on your type of building you are, it dictates where you get your rebates from. So everyone's paying their utility, ComEd, Nicor, Peoples, North Shore, and Ameren, into the rebate program. And then if you're a public sector, though, they take 25% of all that money that's paid in and they give it over to the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity at the state of Illinois. And that 25% of the money they dole out to the public institutions, so tax-funded buildings. So fire stations, village halls, public schools, and stuff like that. They do not apply to ComEd or the gas utilities to get their rebate. They apply to Dceo to get their rebate. So it works a little bit different for those folks. The dollar amounts and some of the rebates are a little bit different as well. I'm not going to go through those in detail right now, primarily because they have not released the new application yet. I got an idea what a lot of them are going to be based on what people have told me they're going to be, but I don't want to put them in the webinar and put them on the screen and then find out they got tweaked. So the program did restart on June 1st, which was a couple weeks ago. The rebate applications are not yet available, but they will be very shortly. It does not expire on May 31st like the regular utility programs. It expires on May 8th because they need a little bit more time to process their stuff. It's handled more as a grant than a rebate, if you will, so it's a little bit different. Things you can get a rebate for, like you said, a ComEd was $60 per horsepower. Variable speed drives are probably going to be $92 a horsepower. That's what they've been for previous years. So the dollar amounts typically are larger. There's rebates for furnaces and boilers and all that same kind of stuff, steam traps. So just know that if it's a public institution, you got to get your money from somewhere different than the gas and electric utility. It still goes through them, but you get it from a different spot. They do also do bonuses every year to try to get you to apply for stuff earlier. Aaron typed in asking what about geothermal for Dceo. In previous years, geothermal was listed as a prescriptive rebate with Dceo. This year, they've said it's going to not be a prescriptive rebate, but you can still do it as a custom. But once again, until the application's out, I don't know that that to be exactly the way it ends up being. But that's what they've stated, Aaron. They have bonus tiers to try to get you to do stuff earlier. You get a 10% bonus if you do it by Halloween, a 5% bonus if you do it by Valentine's Day, and apparently whoever works at Dceo setting targets really loves holidays. But the idea is they want you to do it early and get everything done in advance instead of rushing at the last minute. There's also bonuses available for natural gas. So pretty much all the rebates they have scheduled for natural gas last year and this year, they took the dollar amounts and doubled them to make them twice as exciting. So, for example, a custom rebate would have been $1.50 a therm, which is a fantastic rebate. It's $3 per therm for a custom gas rebate. Those are going to expire on May 8th and no longer be doubled. So if you're doing something with a public institution regarding replacing a boiler or something like that, this would be the year to do it. There's lots of other things too. There's retro commissioning programs, new construction, grant matching stuff. There's also a group called CDAC, Smart Energy Design Assistance Center. They do stuff for both public and private sector in terms of no cost and low cost type energy auditing type things. So you might want to check them out, cdac.org. That's a good resource to have. We'll talk a little bit about some of the non-Illinois stuff. Nipsco did not change. Everything's pretty much the same. It ends on December 31st. So nothing's new there, but this is what it looks like just so you guys know. Boilers for 90%, condensing boilers and up, 90 cents per MBH for the little ones. For the big ones, it's also 90% MBH, but they only got to be 85%. There's boiler tune-ups on the program. There's hot water reset controls, 35 cents per MBH for existing boilers. Burner retrofit for 35 cents per MBH, existing boilers only. Furnaces, condensing furnaces, 90% and up, $225. Let's see, infrared heaters, $2.50 per MBH input. Steam trap replacement, programmable stats, $50. Demand ventilation, 15 cents per square foot. Furnace or rooftop gas tune-ups, $50 to $100 depending on the input BTUs. So some pretty decent rebates there on the gas side. On the electric side in Indiana, there's a program called Energizing Indiana, which is pretty much statewide. So whether you're in Nipsco or Indiana, Michigan Power Territory, you should have the same rebates. So there are rebates for rooftops and split systems, for basically $30 per ton for either 14 SEER for small tonnages or 11 ER for large tonnages. There's also rebates for heat pumps at $50 per ton, P-tax. Chillers are $30 per ton. You have to hit a certain full load efficiency and a certain part load efficiency to get to $30. And then VFDs are $40 per horsepower for putting a VFD on a fan or a chilled water or hot water pump. The fan could be either a supply HVAC fan or a cooling tower fan or anything like that. There's also obviously custom incentives from Nipsco as well for something else that's not on the list, like ERVs or VRF or something like that. On the Michigan side, there's a pretty robust commercial program. While I'm putting that up, I'm going to go ahead and put another poll question up. We got two more and we're almost done here. So we launched that poll question. So here's a hypothetical situation. Public school in Joliet would apply where to get their rebates? Number one would be ComEd and Nicor. Number two is ComEd and People's Gas. Number three is Illinois Dceo. Or number four is state taxes. So we'll give that a few seconds here. I'll look at the questions. Dan asks, are commercial Nipsco programs going away in 2015? The answer is very likely going to be yes, Dan. Just like the residential ones, in Indiana, they changed the law to no longer require utility rebate programs. So they don't have to do it anymore. So it's probable the utility will not run them, or they'll look a lot different. The utility may still choose to run them on their own, but if they do, it's probably going to be more for, in my guess, it's going to be more for demand reasons versus consumption reasons. So they'll probably incentivize you to take things off the grid for a certain period of time or something like that. But I don't know for sure. But it's not state required anymore. It's no longer legally required, but they may or may not choose to do it on their own. Because some utilities, believe it or not, do it on their own because they want to reduce overall demand on the grid so they don't have to increase the capacity of the grid. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. All right, so the correct answer was Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. Public institutions like village halls, police stations, public schools get their rebates through that entity and not directly from the utility. So that was a little bit of a difference there. Most of you got it right, 71%. All right, got a few more slides, and then we'll have our final question our final poll question. All right, so here's the Michigan side of the equation. So, oops, sorry about that. Rebates for boilers, for space heating boilers, $1.50 per MBH, got to be 88% and better, which is basically a condensing boiler. There's also rebates for process boilers. Furnaces, either $1 or $1.40 per MBH, depending on 92 or 95% AFUE. It's also got to be two-stage, and it's also got to have an ECM to qualify. There are some boiler rebates for combustion control management stuff, oxygen trim, turn down, water reset, 20 cents, etc. There's also rebates for tune-ups. I apologize for this one getting all zigzagged. I'm not sure what happened on my slide here. But tune-ups, 10 cents per MBH for either boilers or furnaces. There's rebates for pipe wrap and a few things like that. There are rebates for water heaters commercially. It's not very exciting, 25 bucks for a 0.62 energy factor, 150 bucks for 88% thermal efficiency. That one's pretty decent. There's a rebate for tankless, 90 bucks for 0.82, although tankless is pretty expensive. I don't know how much that's going to pay for it. There's a great rebate of $4 per MBH input for infrared heaters. There's an 8 cents per square foot rebate for demand control ventilation with CO2 sensors. There's rebates for adding setback controls on your building automation system, for chill water reset on your building automation system, and things like that. On the electric side in Michigan, there are also rebates. Basically, they're $10 per ton for going with higher efficiency SEER or EER equipment. There are rebates for heat pumps, also 10 bucks a ton for going with higher efficiency as well. Chillers, it's 20 bucks per ton. You have to hit a certain full load and a certain part load requirement, and it's based on the tonnage of the machine. So if we got a water-cooled machine greater than 300 tons, you got to hit 0.58 kW per ton full load, 0.44 kW per ton per part load, and then you get a $20 per ton rebate. There's also rebates for some stuff on the electric side, like demand control ventilation. So DCV sensors, which say both gas and electric, you can double dip, right? So I can get 8 cents from the gas side of the rebate, and I can get another 3.5 cents on the electric side of the rebate. Same with setback controls. Economizers, $8.50 per ton. Energy management system for chill waters on here, chill water reset. P-tax, geothermal heat pumps, either 15 or 30 bucks a ton depending on the EER. VFDs, 60 bucks per horsepower for fans, 150 bucks per horsepower for pumps. That 150 per horsepower is phenomenal. That's fantastic. That's the highest thing in the Midwest. That's a great rebate. Wisconsin did not change at all either. It's basically the same as it was last year, so I won't go into that in great detail. Just know that there are definitely rebates for your boiler plant. It's based on the size of your boiler and whether it's a single boiler or whether it's a whole plant type of thing. There are rebates for furnaces, unit heaters, PTAC heat pumps, infrared heaters, $2.50 per MBH input. That's a good rebate. There's rebates for DX systems. It's fairly complicated to figure out. You got to do math. I know no one likes math, but it's in the application. You basically fill in the blanks, and you can figure out what your rebate is based on the efficiency and the tonnage. There's a fantastic program in Wisconsin called Rooftop Optimization Program. So it's specifically for targeting rooftop owners, which are more than 50% of the commercial buildings. You get a rebate of either $40 or $100 for the programmable stat. To get the bigger rebate, the programmable stat has to have the ability to interlock its occupancy to the rooftop economizer minimum position. So there are thermostats that do that. We did put a list of them on the FAQ section of the utility website, so you can see what those model numbers are. And on there, I did list, what terminals you wire to and what settings and jumpers you move and all that stuff. So check that out, or ask me for help if you need something in Wisconsin like that. Economizers, to add an economizer to an existing rooftop, 250 bucks. Demand control ventilation, 400 bucks per rooftop. Chiller rebates, you got to have certain part load and certain full load efficiencies, and then do this matrix formula to figure out what your rebate's going to be. But depends on, just like the other utilities, is it air cooled or water cooled? And if it's water cooled, is it centrifugal or something else? Screw, scroll, etc. And there's also rebates for ERVs, 75 cents per CFM, just like People's Gas has. I think People's Gas actually talked to these folks, because the same folks run the program. DCV for non-rooftops, 20 cents per CFM. OA reset on boilers, 50 bucks per horsepower for VFDs. tune-ups on chillers, rooftops, and DX splits, steam pipe insulation and steam traps, combustion management controls, and of course custom stuff. You can also get some good rates and interest for commercial buildings. It's that same website, smartenergypays.com, if you happen to be in Milwaukee. And then just to kind of summarize everything up, there are rebates for stuff that we didn't even touch on today. There's entirely new construction programs for most of these utilities, lighting, compressed air, refrigeration. A lot of them have special programs for data centers, schools, multifamily, small business, agriculture, kitchens, food service, low-income programs, all kinds of stuff like that. I'm going to put the last and final poll question up, and then I'll check to see if anybody else has any questions. So here's the last poll question. Basically, rate the usefulness of this week's webinar. So 1 is I didn't learn a damn thing. 2, I picked up some new things. 3, I found most of it to be useful. D, I learned a lot. And E, Ryan is basically awesome. So just go ahead and click E as many times as you want. That's fine. While you guys are doing that, I'm going to look and see if there's any more questions. Dan asks, which utilities have data center programs specifically other than ComEd? Well, that is true, Dan. ComEd does have a data center program. I think the Focus on Energy program in Wisconsin does as well, but I would have to look that up. And then the other utilities do not. So definitely ComEd, maybe Wisconsin, and then no to Indiana, Michigan, Kansas City, and that kind of stuff. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. The good news is everybody learned something today, so it's pretty well balanced. So I thank you guys for coming out. I'm going to stay on the line here for another couple minutes and see what other questions you guys type in, and then I'll go ahead and close the webinar. This webinar was recorded, so we'll post it up on the TEC website, tecmungo.com, and then click on online learning. There's also thousands of other hours of webinars already on that website, so feel free to be bored and watch webinars for the rest of your life. And the next week's webinar is cooling towers. All right, so every week, every Monday, we're going to have webinars at noon again, and we're going to try to record most of them. And some of them will or will not be PDH webinars, depending on whether they're a product thing or a generic thing. But we'll send that out in the announcement when you see it. If anybody has any further questions, type them in. As of right now, it looks like I answered everybody's questions that I can see. Well, I missed one at the beginning. Paul asked if we can get a copy of the presentation. Like I said, these are recorded and posted, but if somebody needs particular slides, I can send you a particular slide. It's kind of hard to email out the whole thing, though, because it's just so massive, the file size. So if you need a particular slide, let me know. Otherwise, you can also check out the recorded webinar. John actually sent in a response saying that the Focus on Energy program does have a data center program. So ComEd and the Wisconsin Focus on Energy program have specific programs dedicated to data centers, but the other neighboring states do not. And then obviously the gas utilities don't, because data centers use little to no gas. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and close the webinar. And if you have any further questions, feel free to email me or call me or hit me up.